once I got to college and I was on my own, I realized, okay, I don't have boundaries with people. I'm always trying to people please. I'm always trying to reach the next thing. But this continued, like, this has been a very long process for me. I don't really think it was until I was in my late 30s that I realized, okay, I have to figure out boundaries. And I still struggle. I still
Yeah.
struggle with boundaries and people pleasing and not taking things very personally that aren't even necessarily about me.
Welcome, everybody, to episode 14. Our guest today is Jamie Whittle. I pronounced your name right, Jamie?
Yes, you did.
Okay.
Yep.
Awesome. So I happened to get to know Jamie through a podcast forum, and I loved her story, and I think that you will love hers too. So let me just read you her bio really quick. In January 2020, Jamie graduated with her Ph.D. in organizational leadership with a specialization in corporate training and e-learning. It was at this point that she realized that she was not only loving selling travel and tired of grading papers, but also earning more than she was as an assistant professor. She opened her own travel agency, and the Pineapple Escapes became its own independent agency in February of 2020. But then COVID hit. Despite the challenges of a global pandemic in a travel industry, Jamie successfully built a multi-seven-figure agency in 2 years. I just got a chill saying that, by the way. Pineapple Escapes is continuing to prosper and thrive, and Jamie could not be more proud to lead her phenomenal team. Jamie's thrilled to contribute and combine her education, teaching, and training experience with her travel industry expertise to provide transformational training programs, individualized agent and agency consulting, speaking, and conference presentations for travel professionals. Jamie's a certified teacher in the state of Illinois. She's the CEO of Pineapple Escapes, a member of ASTA, IATAN, and CLIA. She spends time Ubering her trio to various activities, including her Frenchie Chip. She loves to ride a Peloton and sneak away for a long weekend with her husband. But what's so interesting about Jamie's story is why she switched from being a doctorate, PhD level assistant professor to owning a travel agency. And that's what we're going to talk about today. And actually, no surprise, how childhood trauma plays into the mix. Because you know me, it always comes back to trauma. So welcome, Jamie.
Thank you.
It's so nice to have you.
Yeah, I'm excited to share my story. I hope that it resonates with someone.
I hope so too. So I'm hoping that you'll just be able to open up. I know I put in the teaser, and we didn't just talk about this in the bio, but you were raised by a mom who was challenged and struggling with borderline personality disorder. Can you share with people what that is and what it's like to be raised with somebody that has borderline personality disorder?
Well, I can try. So
Okay.
it basically is like she is emotionally stuck as a toddler. So she doesn't have the ability or the capability to function at an adult level. So she takes everything very, very personally. And basically, I had to fend for myself from a very young age. And I was lucky. So when my mom found out she was pregnant, she moved home. And so I was actually raised by my mother and my grandfather. So my household growing up, my grandpa was 70 when I was born, and my mom was 30. And they were my two parental figures. So I've been told by countless therapists that it was my grandpa who saved me and has helped me to basically end the cycle with her for these situations. But it's mostly, the biggest thing was I had to be an adult from a very young age and had to basically self-regulate and deal with my emotions on my own. And as soon as I went away to school, my freshman year of college, I'm like, okay, I need counseling. I need some help processing this. And so I found help on campus. And since then, no matter where I've been, I have been in therapy of some sort. So I've been in therapy for over 20 years, trying to process and deal with my experiences from childhood. And then once I had my own children, making sure that I don't repeat those same patterns with my kids.
Awesome. Thank you so much for sharing it in such an easy way for people to understand. And, as a mental health practitioner, we hear about this a lot. And this idea of the child having to become the parent, even though your grandfather was in the mix, it is such a profound type of trauma. And I'm so glad when you and I originally did our pre-podcast powwow that this was something we could talk about today, because I'm trying so hard to get people to understand and to educate the masses the difference between this big T and this little t. Big T is what people know as trauma, right? Violence, aggression, abuse, really up in your face. It's a thunderstorm. Everybody could rectify and recognize that that is trauma.
Right.
But what you're talking about, the industry calls a little t, right? And there's actually a term for it. It's called parentification, where a child becomes the parent and their emotional needs cannot be met and they cannot be nurtured and they cannot be fostered by an adult, which we as children require. So as you mentioned, it creates a lot of internal processing or lack thereof. But regardless, whether it's the big T or the little t, the body processes it the same. Because what the message to the body is I'm not enough for this person to show up. I'm unworthy of this person showing up. I'm not deserving of this person showing up. And therefore, my being is unsafe and at risk. And anytime the mind or the body feels unsafe, and this is why big T and little t are processed the same way, it's an alarm. And when that alarm system goes off, everything in the body changes from head to toe, neurobiologically, chemically, relationally, emotionally, everything shifts, right? So somebody might not look at your scenario and see that as childhood trauma, but it is. And it's really, in some cases, and I'm not one to diagnose, I can't do that, but some professionals could even diagnose as a CPTSD, which is called complex PTSD, meaning you had to be in this state of stress over and over and over and over and over again. So you're in a constant state of fight or flight. Or in your case, which we're going to talk about, fawning. So there's 4 ways: fight, flight, freeze, or fawn, that people cope. Fawning shows up like people pleasing, overdoing, overextending, perfectionism, lack of boundary setting. If I do those things, maybe that person will then snap out of it, because that's what the child brain thinks can happen. So knowing that, tell me, Jamie, what coping strategies came up for you? And how did you know in college it was time to shift that? How did you know that was no longer working for you?
Well, I think the biggest thing is I thought I could fix it. And so I thought if I was always a quote unquote good girl and did everything that I was supposed to do and didn't rock the boat, that it would be better. And that if I did X, if I got straight A's, then maybe I wouldn't have to worry about it. And it was kind of part of it, I think, is like being able to read others' emotions. Like I had to be able to look at how things were going on any given day and judge, okay, what's going to happen today? Like, is she on edge today? Is she okay today? What can I do today to keep things even keel and get through the day without issue? And so there was a lot of that. And then that kind of manifested. And I don't think I really noticed it until college, just because I was trying to survive.
Yeah.
But once I got to college and I was on my own, I realized, okay, I don't have boundaries with people. I'm always trying to people please. I'm always trying to reach the next thing. But this continued, like, this has been a very long process for me. I don't really think it was until I was in my late 30s that I realized, okay, I have to figure out boundaries. And I still struggle. I still
Yeah.
struggle with boundaries and people pleasing and not taking things very personally that aren't even necessarily about me. So it's an ongoing process and something that I've had to spend my whole life working on.
Yeah. Yeah. And I'm so, so, so glad today. This is a big part of the topic because so often when people are stuck and they have had this quote unquote little t, maybe they've been in a similar situation to you, they don't understand the reason why they're stuck is because their body's still in a trauma response, right? They haven't processed it through. Was there anything specific that you did to process through it? Or was it more simply, talk therapy? Was there anything unique about anything that you did that you feel helped?
I mean, I've been in therapy with different providers. And so I feel like sometimes the shift in who I was working with has helped. So about 4 years ago, I switched to a different therapist, and that was a big deal for me. And that was around the time when I was teaching full time, selling travel full time, writing my dissertation for my PhD.
Mm,
Plus, I had 3 elementary school kids. So everything had piled on. And I have a pattern of I pile it all on until I can't take it anymore. And then I have to kind of figure my way out of it. And it's all people pleasing. Like
yeah.
it's about, okay, what can I do to, I don't know, I guess part of it is to
Serve
eventually,
others.
yes, to serve other and just to, I don't know the word I'm looking for, but to be worthy, I guess, more than
Yeah, I
anything.
mean, what people don't understand is when people find themselves in these situations, the need to please comes from a need to protect. I need to control my environment because this feels out of control. I don't know what I can predict for the day. So if I keep these waters calm, I have a higher likelihood of the day being calm, and that's going to feel good to me. And
Yes.
we're doing it subconsciously, right? So it becomes very rooted in our being. It comes very, very rooted in the foundation of how we just simply show up. When you were talking about, really overachieving, right? Selling travel, getting your PhD, being a professor, assistant professor, all these different things while having 3 young children, 2 of which are twins.
Yep.
The word that came to mind, and I'm wondering if it resonates with you, is high functioning anxiety as well.
Yes.
Does that
Absolutely.
speak? Okay. So
Yes.
the reason why I wanted to bring that up is because I think that we're seeing so much of this, right? And so what is high functioning anxiety? It's like high functioning alcoholic, right? It's I have this maladaptive coping strategy, which is do, overproduce till the point of burnout, right? To the point of
Yes.
breakdown. And I've been in a couple of different groups where people are like, hi, my name is Jill, and I'm a recovering overdoer, and now I want to be a beer, meaning I just want to align to who I am and have my worth come from who I am, not what I do. Because so often people align their worth to how do I make other people feel by way of doing whatever it is, making a dozen cupcakes every single month for the PTO, whatever it is. It could be anything where you're overextending, you're stressed out, but you're so afraid if I don't do it, people will know I'm not worthy. Right. So here you are, you're in this PhD program, you've pushed through, you get your PhD, you've hit the pinnacle, all that work, and what happens?
And I just decided I was done. I had the opportunity at that point to either take a new teaching position or shift completely. And I decided, you know what? I really enjoy selling travel. I think that I can have fun with this and make it a career. And no one wanted to support me. But I mean, my husband got on board, but that actually took some time.
Yeah.
But like my in-laws were like, you are crazy. This is not the right choice. You just finished this PhD. Why would you throw all that away? You just invested all of this money to get this PhD. You don't need any degree necessarily to be a travel agent. What are you doing? And I just decided, I don't care what you think. This is what I'm going to do. Here I go. And that was really big for me because I had never really done that before. I had always done what I felt like everyone else wanted me to do. And there was pushback. There was a lot of pushback. And I kept going and I said, you know what, as long as I can pay my bills, you guys don't need to worry about it. So
I'm curious what you think. What do you why do you think the opinions were so strong on something that you wanted to do in your life? What was the opinion? Where did it, like, what was the behind that?
I honestly don't know. I think with my husband and I, it took time for him to really understand what I was doing. Like, because I had just been doing it on the side for so long that it was just like not even really a thing for him. And then when I said, okay, I just spent 5 years getting this PhD, but I want to just forget that and I want to do this, it was hard for him. But with my in laws, I think it was more perception of like, okay, you know, you're the first doctorate in the family. Like, why aren't you going to do something with it? And, you know, oh, well, you're going to just own a travel agency. Like, why don't you commute into Chicago and get a real job? Was kind of the perception. And I think part of it was that's what they had hoped for me. And so then whenever I shifted, that was really hard for them to deal with.
I'm loving this part of our podcast because I'm writing down a whole bunch of stuff. The one thing I wrote down was optics. Okay. The other thing I wrote down was fear. Because really, I wrote down the fear first. The optics is rooted in the fear. I need other people because it's really not about you. I need other people to perceive our life as X, the people in our family as Y, because that gives a certain perception that we have either achieved a certain level or we are something. Again, rooting our worthiness in what we do, not who we are. Happy, content, kind, compassionate, loving, right? The things that matter, the things that we want for our own kids. And there's this fear of what are people going to think? And that's why I was asking, what did you think the opinion was rooted in? Because it's really not necessarily in anyone's best interest. It wasn't in the best interest of you. You're bright. You just got a PhD. You probably have done the numbers and you've probably analyzed this to the tilt before you've even told anybody that you want to do this. So it's almost like saying, well, you're not smart enough to make your own decisions for yourself, which I know you have, right? So that opinion, and I think we all bump up against this, and this is why I want to talk about it. We're all bumping up against other people's opinions, and I'll give you my own story because it's pretty interesting. On big decisions that we've made that are heart-centered, that make us feel alive, that we know are in alignment with who we are. And it's very frustrating to have to go up against someone else and have to debate it or convince.
Justify it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
justify it. I'll give you an example. I had a really hard time getting pregnant. I went through 2 years of infertility. We were all lined up. Yeah, we were all lined up for all the treatments. But I have a lot of history in my family of women in my family taking on extra hormones, and it doesn't fare well. Lots of breast cancer, lots of early death, blood clotting, all kinds of stuff. And it's always been linked to hormones. So I was like really analyzing, like, what's best for me? What do I want? Do I want to be pregnant? Is that really important to me? Do I want to raise a child? Is that really important to me? And I recognized for me, I didn't really need to be pregnant. That wasn't high on the list.
Mm-hmm.
So I started researching other ways I could have a child and came across adoption and had this conversation. And my husband and I sat in that for probably 5-6 months and didn't share it with anybody that we were contemplating it and researching it and doing all the things that you probably did when you were making your decision, right? All the pros and cons. And then once we were solid in our decision, we started telling our family. And my father was like, well, what about the IVF? And I'm like, I'm not feeling it. And the response is, what am I going to tell my friends when they ask me how many rounds of IVF you did? And I have to tell them none because you didn't even try. And it's my podcast, so I can say it. My response was, I don't give a flying fuck what your friends think about me, quite frankly. It's not their fucking business.
Good for you.
But the reality is, here was someone that was trying to manipulate and convince me to make a different decision based not on what was going to be best for me or my husband or my family, but what was going to be in the best interest of them. How is it going to serve them? Right?
I find your story interesting. So my kids are actually all IVF babies. I did 5 IVFs to get my son Bo. And then I said I would do one more, and I got the twins. So as soon as it was during the 5th IVF cycle, though, that we also researched adoption and we're starting to go that route. And then I ended up pregnant with him. And I said I would only do one more, and we got the girls. But infertility is such an interesting piece, and it's its own trauma, I think, that impacts a lot of different things. And so that trauma then on top of other trauma also impacts, how you raise your kids and how you think about different things with them. So I find that fascinating.
It is. And, just for people, for terminology reasons, so people get educated, the first trauma you ever have in your life, which can actually start in the womb, or really it can be intergenerational, is called an anchor trauma. And how we've coped with that trauma indicates and helps determine how we're able to cope with future traumas. And a lot of it has to do with the frequency that we receive trauma, the intensity of it, the duration of it. Those all play a role in how people are able to cope and survive with future challenges. Right? So you're right. Infertility is its own trauma. If you're going into it already believing and having formed the core belief at a younger age that I'm not enough, or I'm not worthy, or I'm not deserving of ... And then you have an experience where you're desperately wanting something and you're doing all the things. It's like the worst part of it was like, you're doing all the right things and you can't pass the test. I've studied my ass off. I've done everything you've told me to do. There's literally no good reason why I keep getting an F. I just keep getting an F.
Yes.
Right? And so there's a lot of emotion that comes up, and it can really affect everything, how you're responding to work, how you're responding to yourself, how you're responding to your spouse. It's a real roller coaster and a super mind fuck. It's really horrible and very sad. It's a really sad time. So going back to other people's opinions, optics, rooted in fear, how were you able to, or maybe you didn't, communicate with your family members that had, I'm going to put in quotes, concerns about your crazy idea of going from PhD to travel agent and owning your own agency? So how did you rectify that? How did you, first, where did you find the courage to stand in your truth? And second, how did they react to that? Like, how did you get beyond that?
Well, with my husband, we actually ended up in therapy for a short time just to kind of have someone to moderate and to talk through the process. And I mean, obviously, when I started, the pandemic wasn't a thing. So then a month in, we hit the pandemic. So then that required, us to invest our resources for the agency, which also was an interesting financial component because, here I am starting this agency and I had expected all of these trips to travel, so these commissions to come in, and now those are all off the table. So we had a financial dynamic there where we had to make the decision to invest our own savings to make the agency work. And so that added a whole other piece to the picture. But with my husband, it was more we went to therapy and we figured it out. And eventually he realized, this is what makes her happy. And, even if we don't, I mean, as long as we can pay our bills and we end up okay, it'll be fine. And she's smart and she'll figure it out. And hey, guess what? I'm smart and I figured it out.
Yeah.
But he was able to see that, but it did take time because he too was like, okay, you just spent 5 years getting a PhD. And it was a lot because I was working and the kids, and it had been a season. And so then to come out of that and for me to say, okay, I just did this and now I'm not going to do anything with it, that was hard for him. With my in-laws, it ended up taking a different look. And basically, I ended up going no contact with them for about 9 months just because I couldn't. They aren't the type that will hear what I have to say. It's basically their way or the highway. And, Mike and the kids still saw them. My husband and the kids still saw them. But I basically had to go no contact to kind of cement that boundary that this is what I'm going to do. And it doesn't matter what you think.
Can we talk about that? Because I think this is such a challenge for so many people because there's a fear of rejection, abandonment, lack of connection. So, but it is so important when you're in, I'm going to put it in quotes, and I'm not saying that this is what it was, but very often when we find ourselves in toxic relationships, that no contact, low contact is such a good resource and a good tool when it's warranted, but it takes a tremendous amount of courage. And it also takes a lot of self-confidence and self-knowing, right? So here you are again, you've made this calculated decision. This is not a fly by the seat of your pants decision. And you're really up against it. The universe has now planted a global pandemic in your lap and saying, how bad do you really want it? Right? Because here's about the biggest hurdle you could have. And a lot of people would say, okay, I'm just going to call mercy and I'll just, kind of walk back to where I was because it's safe, it's predictable, it's consistent. I know it. I have the training for it. So I'll just go back because this is just too much.
And there were definitely moments when my brain went that way. And
Sure.
then I would circle back and go, no, that's
So
not where I want to be. Like, but that definitely came up, especially during the pandemic. I mean,
I can't imagine.
Yeah.
There's so many industries were impacted, but travel was
Yes.
like in the tippity top, right?
Yes.
So first of all, let me just honor you and say what a badass you are. Because no, really, honestly, because being in this space, I know for sure how hard that must have been. Really hard to say it's
Yes.
my truth. And by the way, I matter and what I want matters. And what I want is significant and important. And I'm saying, no, this is what I want. Knowing you grew up in an environment where there was absolutely no opportunity for that. That is not lost on me. I see that very, very clearly. So, for people that don't understand how ginormous it was for Jamie to stand in her truth, I actually have a little sign behind me that I made for my office. It's a little pink sign. You can see it right here. And I made this up and I send it to my clients all the time. And it says, know your truth and trust your knowing. You know your truth. We all have that instinct. And when we ignore it, it starts as a whisper. I'm sure it started this way for you, where it was like, travel agency. I love it. It's so good. I have fun doing it. I feel fulfilled. And then over here you have, but you're almost done and you sacrifice so much stuff. And this is what you've been working for. But then you hear travel agency again, and now it's getting a little louder and a little louder. And so often we ignore the inner voice because of the optics, because of the fear, because of the paradigm of what if it doesn't work. But I can see that as that voice got louder, you were like, I need to start listening to this. And actually, dreaming that dream is actually feeling really good inside my system. And I'm going to have to take massive, bold, audacious action to take a leap, which, by the way, is exactly how I got into my coaching business at age 49. I had a little opposite of you. I had been in direct sales for many years, doing very well, but I was really bored. And my favorite part was the mentoring and the coaching that I was doing. And I kept thinking to myself, oh my God, if I could just get paid for that, that would be a dream. And then I was like, well, why not do that? And so I kept hearing like, coach. And I would start researching shit. I was looking up all these different programs. My husband's like, what are you doing? I'm like, don't worry about it. I just needed to marinate it for a long time until that whisper was no longer a whisper. It was a very loud voice all day, every day. You need to be coaching. You need to be doing this. You need to be doing this, until you just say, I'm going to take a leap of faith and I'm going to listen to my gut. And then you line up all of the things that you need to do in order to do it.
Yeah,
and that's
absolutely.
Scary thing. People are like, what do you mean you're shifting careers at almost 50? And I was like, dude, this is my last act. I can build this and do this till I'm 75, 80 years old. Because you know what? Once you're doing something you love, really, really love, and you're really instinctively good at it, it's your gift. It's not work.
Right. You lose track of time.
It's just pleasure.
Yeah.
And you get paid for it.
Which doesn't hurt either, but.
No, but you can make an impact while making an income and not have any shame about that. So it's not lost on me, all the process that you had to go through in order to make this happen is massive. So you leap this global pandemic hurdle while trying to convince everybody, listen, I'm a smart person. I know what I'm doing, and I'm going for my dream. And where does it stand now? Tell us about this business now.
Okay, so right now I have 30 agents. We are located all across the country, and it is a lot of fun. We are close to 5 million in sales for this year, which is still little. We're still a boutique agency in terms of, we're not a big host agency, but we're right where I want to be for this stage. And I think the best part for me is it does take my teaching, my coaching side, and allows me to do those things in a way that brings me more joy than teaching high school or college kids. So I'm mentoring and working with my agents. We actually, next week, I'm at a conference in Fort Lauderdale, and then a group of my agents and I are going to Punta Cana. We're going to tour resorts and do some different training type of things. So those are the things that really bring me joy, and helping my agents to succeed and build their own business has really brought me a lot of joy too.
This is really interesting that you're sharing this, because you got your PhD in organizational leadership and e-learning. And it's so interesting. I didn't put the two and two together before, but everything you learned for your PhD, everybody had this one trajectory of where it would go. Professorship, right?
Mhm.
Because that's like a really prominent job, and that's really fantastic. And we can all talk about it with such praise. But I could totally see how you're utilizing everything that you learned on a daily basis in a way that's much more fulfilling, impacts your family in a really positive way financially, impacts the lives of others in a really, really positive way, both your agents, right? But also the people who get a chance to experience these amazing trips.
Yeah, my clients too. I love being able to see their pictures when they come back, and help them to make all those details perfect. I love that part too. And being able to travel with my family. We're able to travel so
Yeah.
much more, and that makes a big difference too.
I love it. So tell us a little bit about Pineapple Escapes. What makes it unique? What can people expect if they want to travel? Maybe you could even share with people like what you're seeing post-COVID travel. Like, let's talk a little bit about what you do, and how somebody might be interested in using your services.
Sure. So Pineapple Escapes specializes in Disney destinations, Universal cruises, all inclusives, and Hawaii. But we do a little bit of everything. Like this morning, I was working on a Europe booking. I have clients who are doing like a multi-leg, where they're flying to Paris, then they're going to Barcelona and doing a cruise, then from Barcelona doing London. I was also booking a Walt Disney World this morning, and then we are working on a group cruise, which actually isn't until June of 2024. So I was working on all of that this morning. So that was just my morning stuff. But um, all of the agents kind of find their niche more or less. I do a lot of family travel, obviously, because that's what I do. I travel with my family. So it really depends on your agent. But we have agents all across the country: California, Texas, New York, wherever you are, we have an agent. So we can definitely help. And when you book with us, our services, unless you're doing like something like the big Europe trip, those we usually charge a planning fee. But like if you're doing Disney or Universal, it's the same price as it would be if you booked on your own. But when you book with us, you have our expertise to help you. And so I'm at Disney World at least 3 or 4 times a year. I'm at Universal at least 3 or 4 times a year. So we have all of that firsthand knowledge and experience, both with other agents as we've trained and with our families, to help make our clients' trips perfect.
Are people using, I feel like way back prior to the internet, I always used a travel agency. I booked my honeymoon through a travel agency. And then people think that they're travel agents, just like people think they're realtors. Now that, the internet makes everything so available, why would someone want to use a travel agency versus just booking it on their own? Because I will tell you this, I wish we knew each other before. Because we just did a 10-day excursion in California this summer.
Mm-hmm.
We did the Pacific Coast. We started in San Francisco and we ended in LA. And that was a tremendous amount of work to plan that trip. I was going in completely blind. I was literally picking everything just based on what it looked like on the internet. Luckily, knock on wood, I did okay. But the reality is, it was kind of stressful planning it. It was kind of fun, but part of it was stressful because I wasn't quite sure I knew what I was doing. Why would somebody want to work with a travel agency? And what are some of the myths that people think would happen if they're working with an agency?
Well, I think the biggest one is that it costs more. So unless you're doing something really extravagant, it doesn't cost more. It's the same price for you, whether you book it on your own or book with us. So why wouldn't you want to utilize our expertise? And most of the things that I sell, I have done on my own. Like I have gone and experienced them. If I don't have the expertise, then I'm going to refer you to a different agent who does.
Mm.
So you're working with someone who has been there, who has done that, and who can explain things and answer all of your questions all along the way, even up until when you're traveling. Plus, if you run into issues, let's say your flight is delayed, your flight is canceled, a hundred other things, whatever those issues are that you run into, you have a real person, not a website, a real person you can talk to and say, hey, this is happening. What do I need to do now? What's our next step? Can you help me do X to help you get through those challenging issues that occur?
I think that's such an important thing in a post-COVID travel world because we were very, very lucky with our California travel airline wise, but it was right at the time where all the memes were going around where, everyone's locked, stocked, and barreled in a corner of an airport for days because things were being canceled. We didn't have that issue at all. We were really, really lucky in that respect. But that has become such a problem because the whole industry has been impacted, including the airlines, that things are still understaffed and things are being canceled and delayed extensively. So that's a really, really good thing for people to know, especially if they want to be doing some extensive travel in this post-COVID world. It probably would really be beneficial to use an agency.
Yeah, and I think it's just so nice to have a real person who gets to know you and understands your family. A lot of the clients that I book with, I've been working with for 8 or 9 years now. So I know their family. I know what they expect. I know what
Super
they're
cool.
wanting out of their trip. And so that makes it really easy to suggest options and to plan for them.
I love that. Okay, so I've just put on the webcast what your Instagram handle is, but let me just, for the podcast purposes, let people know how they can find out more about this aspect of your life. So the name of the travel agency is Pineapple Escapes, and that is the website. It's www.pineappleescapes.com. Okay, and if they go there, they can start working on the process with you. If people want to check out Jamie and her travels and her family on Instagram, it's her name. It's at Jamie Weitl. It's GAMIEWEITL. And on Facebook, it's Jamie Weitl Travel, right? I have to say, your story's super duper inspirational to me. And I'm hoping that it's really inspirational to at least one person listening, because I do think so much of the anxiety and so much of the depression that we're seeing these days are people not following their dreams. People so worried about other people's opinions, knowing maybe they have that whisper that we talked about. And it is getting louder. And there's some sort of paradigm that's convincing them that doing that would not be okay. And I respect your courage. I respect the decision that you made. I can see why people would have been questioning it. And I love the fact that you knew your truth and you trusted your knowing, because that's a sign of somebody who really respects themselves, has a lot of self-love, has a lot of self-worth, knows they're deserving of what they want.
Working on it.
Working on it. But this is such a beautiful example of the 20 years of work that you've done. And that's what I really want to point out to people. It's not perfect, right? We all slip in to our old ways and our old thoughts and our old triggers. But the reality is really a good example of someone who, for a large part of her formative years, could not ever put herself first. Right? That's parentification 101. I must take care of my parent. That's what's going to keep me alive, really. Okay. That's what it boils down to, guys. If I can keep my mom or my dad or my parent or my caretaker alive, AKA connected, happy, whatever, then I'm alive. It's a heavy burden to carry, and I can see why it would require decades of work to unravel. But this is a beautiful example of it. So, congratulations on that.
Thank you.
It's really impressive, honestly, from someone who knows. Very impressive. So, guys, again, check Jamie out. It's pineappleescapes.com. Her Instagram is Jamie Whittle, Weitl, and you can find her on Facebook at Jamie Whittle Travel. Jamie, thank you so much for coming in and sharing your story. It's been a pleasure to have you here.
This was great. Thank you so much.
I love it. All right, guys, if you're interested in this episode or any future episodes, you can always check out my podcast. It's where all podcasts are found. You just have to search Flip That Shit or search my name, Stacey Uhrig. It's STACEYUHRIG. We've got our 2020 season there, and this season, which is our 2022 season, will be up very shortly. You can also catch the YouTube play on replay at my YouTube channel, which is my name, staceyuhrig.com. Thank you so much, guys. Have a great day.